Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well, please? Can you hear me, please? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thanks for coming. It's really a pleasure to have you, all of you here for this program. I'm Yerevan Saeed, the Barzani Scholar for Global Kurdish Studies here at the Global International Service. I'm also a non-resident fellow at the Arab Gulf Institute in Washington. The Kurdish program of the Kurdish project is with a mission for promoting Kurdish culture, global peace, conflict resolution, and a proud history here at SIS since its founding in 1999. So we are almost in the 25th anniversary of this project. It also includes a generous scholarship for students who are interested in Kurdish affairs. It's called the Barzani Peace Fellowship. If you are interested in Kurdish studies, or if you are if you want to learn more about Kurdistan and your research interest is in Kurdish studies, please do apply for it. You can find more information about this scholarship on SIS website. And if Kurdish studies not your interest, it's my sincere hope that the Kurdish food, especially the kebab, will make you interested in the world of Kurdish affairs. We're terrible in almost everything, especially when it comes to politics. But when it comes to our kebab, no one can beat us. I promise. The food will be really great. There is another thing that I would like to address. Do not expect me to dance or sing Kurdish for you here. You'll be greatly disappointed. I'm hoping again the kebab do the magic and fulfill the cultural requirement for this event. Some housekeeping rules here. After my short introduction, I'm going to sit with our distinguished guest. We're going to engage in a conversation, and after that, I'm going to open the floor for Q&As. Please make sure you'll introduce yourself so that we can report you to FBI later, right? That's very important. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure and privilege to extend a warm welcome, probably more accurately to say a welcome back to our distinguished guest, because she's an alumni of SIS. She did her undergrad degree at American University. Master's, here at the American University. We are really honored to have you to share your deep insight and expertise on the dynamics and the complex situation in a very sensitive region of the world. It's called Kurdistan region. Ms. Aziz served as a senior advisor to the Prime Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government, Mr. Barzani. She has over 25 years of experience in public and private sector in the United States. In July of 2023, she assumed her new role as the top Kurdish diplomat to Washington, D.C. Kurdistan, with a rich, history, diverse culture, and a very unique geopolitical location in the Middle East, is subjected to enduring global interest. For those who don't know about Kurds or Kurdistan, Kurdistan is really stretched over 4, different countries. Over 40 million people live in Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran. Again, their own world. And the focus of our discussion is the Kurdistan region of Iraq. It's a federal region. It's a constitutionally recognized part of Iraq. It has every feature of a state except international recognition. In 2007, the Kurdistan region of Iraq took a historic step towards independence, with 93% of the population voting in favor of an independent Kurdish state. Kurdistan, generally Kurds in the Middle East, played a pivotal role in the fight against ISIS. The Kurdish people, the members of the Kurdish security forces, from all these parts of Kurdistan that they mentioned, made tremendous sacrifices. And as media call it, the Kurds were the boots on the ground, and they fought on behalf of the world. Also, Kurdistan region became a safe haven for millions of IDPs and refugees from Syria, from Iran. It became home for vulnerable populations such as Christians. It's the safest place for the Christians in the country. But since 2017, the Kurdistan region has faced backlashes. It has experienced significant challenges politically, financially, economically, and also in the term of security. Not many people want to say this, but the fact is the Iraqi government has put every kind of pressure economic, including an economic or financial embargo on the Kurdistan region. It has withheld the federal budget to the Kurdish region. It also forced the Kurdistan regional government to stop exportation of oil. The Kurdish region was dependent on oil for its survival. That's why we have the KRG not been able to pay its civil servants for the last 3 months. So lots of issues really going on in the Kurdistan region, regionally, and also we're going to discuss the Kurdish-American relationship. We have our distinguished guest. She's a representative of the KRG to Washington, D.C. She will be able to enlighten us on this, very complex, relationship is the situation of the Kurds in the Middle East. So without further ado, I would like, to join the representative and ask some questions. And after that, as I mentioned, I'm going to open the floor for you. After we are done with our conversation, the food will be there, and there will be an opportunity for networking and also taste the kebab as well. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Very well. So they're asking for 2 minutes extension because of the TV. They are putting the camera. 4 hours.
Sorry.
Okay, I think it's time to start it.
Yeah. Very much.
Okay, thank you very much for for coming, and it's really pleasure again. So, Ms. Aziz, if you can tell us what's really going on in Kurdistan, especially if you enlighten us about the relationship between Erbil and Baghdad, and what were the issues and that have remained so outstanding, and no one has been able, to find solutions for that.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very happy to be back in my old school. Although this was not existed when I was here. I think we were in the smaller, older building. So it's been a while since I've been back. So it's a pleasure for me. I think this is my first open public engagement. So it's fitting that it's at my old school. So thank you for having me. The relationships in Baghdad and what's happening on the ground, it's complicated, as you alluded to. There's a combination of challenges, both internally and externally. There are nation actors, non-state actors, and now we have a war not that far away from us. So we're worried about the possible expansion of this conflict and the impact it's going to have on our people. With regards to Baghdad, as you know, back in 2003, after the Gulf War, there was a significant effort towards building a new Iraq, where our American friends and coalition allies helped to build a new Iraq with a new constitution that includes rights and responsibilities for various provinces, regions, and help to really establish how that federal system is going to work going forward. The unfortunate news is that it's never really been implemented. We continue to have articles of the Constitution that are not abided by. The government fails to address significant concerns regarding a whole host, and I can get into details about that. And that continues to be the issue today. Our entire relationship with Baghdad is based off a federal system where we have rights as the region, with our own government, with our own powers, and we have power sharing as well, responsibilities. We have been trying to work with Baghdad since the beginning, in how to power share, how to revenue share, how to administer some territorial disputes. And all of that, unfortunately, has not really made much progress. And so we have this relationship where there is both a mix of cooperation on some shared values and then contention. And that is directly connected to resource and land management. And so what we have is a situation where this new government, I won't talk about the past too much, this new government that was created out of a compromise, and to be frank, with the critical support of the Kurds. I was in Erbil when these negotiations were going on, and there was an agreement that we had with the federal government on a list of items that are outstanding that we agreed had specific timelines and dates for us to work together. And this new Prime Minister, Sudani, is a genuine person. We have had positive relationship, and we have been building on that relationship for the past year. The unfortunate news, regrettably, is that there are other actors who are pulling the strings in Baghdad. And unfortunately, it is not the prime minister. So we have proxies and various agencies within the administration, within the government, that are being used to exert not only tension and pressure, but really a squeeze on our economy, on our political autonomy, and really our security. And these are very alarming, very concerning. This was before the current Gaza conflict. And so as we are trying to navigate this very complex issues, we can reach agreements pretty easily. And we have several agreements with the current prime minister regarding oil, regarding budget, even territorial disputes. However, 0 of those items have been implemented. And in fact, when we have agreements and the cabinet is putting forth these proposals to the parliament, they get completely sidelined. They put in different terms, terms that we don't like, terms that are not in our favor. And then as a minority in Baghdad parliament, sometimes we're forced to accept it. And that has led to a lot of tension and a lot of, I think, negotiations back and forth, trying to find alternative and creative ways to adhere to our initial agreements within the reality of actors that are trying to undermine our goodwill. I'll stop there.
That was a very good summary of all these issues that Kurds have been trying to deal with in the not just the last 2 decades, but in fact, like historically in Baghdad, we seem to always come back to square one and try to resolve the same issues that we have been trying to resolve in the last 100 years. You talked about the security issues, and now there's a war in the Middle East, and there might be a potential that it become a regional war. And how do you think that will impact the Kurdistan region? It's my understanding there was some sort of skirmish between the Iraqi army and the Peshmerga forces. There were some casualties from both sides. What can the American do to make sure that Kurdistan will remain safe, stable, and also its rights are protected within the framework of Iraq?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a question that I deal with on a daily basis now in this new role. Look, yes, the forces of the PMF, Iraqi Shias, I'll say in short, have been for months now trying to encroach on areas and territories on the border between our forces and their forces. And over the weekend, unfortunately, there was a scrimmage with Peshmerga forces. We did receive some casualties, both sides, I should say. Unfortunately, though, I think both Baghdad and Erbil contained the situation so that it didn't escalate. But this is a worry that we have, and we've been having it for months, and we've been expressing that to people in Washington, that this increasing security threat is going to be destabilizing not only our relationship, but the region. And now that we do have this conflict in Gaza, we are very concerned about the expansion of it with foreign agents and proxies being used to expand to the region. You all, I think, know our geography. We've got some hostile neighbors who are not very supportive of the KRG. And so the presence of US forces and bases on our territory make us an open target. And we are concerned about that. So the security of America should be the security of Kurdistan. The protection of America should be the protection of Kurdistan. We're in this together. We have been working together for years to build a viable, strong KRG. And we are asking our American partners and our friends that should there be an escalation, there needs to be a priority on protecting Kurdistan, because we will be bombarded, both again, externally and internally. And recent statements by various Iraqi militia groups have even been very public about their intentions. The situation on the ground has even elevated to the Americans issuing a travel advisory for people, as well as a reduction of non-essential, non-emergency personnel. So they will be, in some way or the other, transporting these people both from Baghdad and from Erbil. It is concerning to us. At the same time, we understand the security, and there have been over the past 10 days or so attacks on American forces and bases, both in Iraq and in Syria. So this is something that we are concerned with. We're monitoring it. Where are we going to end up? It's a $1 million question. I don't know that I can answer that, but it is definitely something that is front and center on our minds.
Great, thank you. You speak very well about the security challenges to the KRG. In fact, there has been lots of drone attacks and also some rockets on the American air bases in Kurdistan region, also Erbil airport in the past, and the existence of these militia forces on the border between Kurdistan and Iraq has been quite challenging, not just politically and also for the safety of the citizen, but also economically. Because it's my understanding that many oil companies that were in Kurdistan, they were quite concerned about deteriorating of the security situation in the Kurdistan region. Now, moving a little bit towards oil and the economic situation in Kurdistan. As I mentioned, KRG is not doing well, and it's not doing well because of what it's between hard and rock places. On one hand, Baghdad does not allow the Kurdistan regional government to export oil so that it can function as a normal government. On the other, you have the federal government does not send budget to the KRG. What are the causes of all these problems? Why Baghdad is not trying to solve this issue, this pandemic issue that has been there for quite a long time?
Yeah, thanks for that. So you're right. The Kurdistan region for 7 months now, since March, has not been able to export its own oil, to international markets. We have been a consequence of a battle between Ankara and Baghdad, volleying their grievances and complaints to each other. And the time that the oil pipeline has been closed, there's been a loss of $7 billion in revenue. This is not an insignificant amount in any standards. For that reason, we have not been able to invest in critical infrastructure, paying our civil servants, including the oil companies that have been partners of ours since 2014. We have taken on this risk together, and they were quite profitable for many, many years. And now the threat of the oil pipeline or the delay in the reopening is definitely concerning them, and it concerns us because we consider them friends of ours. What's the challenge in Baghdad? As I mentioned, there is a systematic campaign in Baghdad to strangle the KRG, financially, economically, politically. And there is no real incentive or urgency to Baghdad to reopen this pipeline. Instead, what we've been doing is sending tens of thousands of barrels to Baghdad to use internally. It is at the same time not being paid for by Iraq. They continue to slow walk and delay our rightful share of the federal budget. And so we are in a catch-22. We have attempted to diversify our reliance on oil in various fields. And under this cabinet, under this prime minister, we have actually been able to double our non-oil revenues. But it's nowhere near enough what we need for our national expenses. Baghdad, at the same time, is sort of punishing us for being able to generate other revenue by deducting it from the share of our. So as you can see, it's a very imbalanced, unfair way to treat the KRG's budget. We continue to do our best, our outreach, but at the same time, we ask the Americans for their help. And historically, the US has played a very productive and useful impartial arbitrator in the past. They have, for various political reasons and regional dynamics, have not as much focus in Iraq or in the region. And that has left a vacuum that has been filled by malign actors. And they are doing lots of damage, not just to Kurdistan, but to the Iraqi people, to be honest. So it's a challenge for us, and we are trying to survive. However, it's becoming increasingly difficult as the delay in the oil pipeline continues to drag on.
Thank you. You know, there has been always this dilemma for me. On one hand, 2017, the Kurds tried to have their own independent state through the referendum that was held. But the whole world really unified against the Kurds, and they said, okay, you cannot have your own states, right? And then we have this situation where the Kurdish political, economic, and even cultural rights have been, violated. The constitution in Iraq has been violated. And what is the role of the international community, especially our Western friends, to help broker some sort of a permanent, long-enduring agreement between Baghdad and Erbil?
No, for sure, the US and the coalition allies and the international community, international organizations who are all in Iraq, and they're both in Baghdad and in Erbil, can play a positive role. It's more to do with political will than it is anything else. We have been asking our friends to exert more pressure on Baghdad to reopen the pipeline, for example. It's not just in the KRG's interest, it's in Iraq's interest, it's in the region's interest, it's in the global market interest for increased energy resources at a time when the Russia-Ukraine war is decreasing those. So it's in US national interest to have increased energy assets, not decrease. So the 400 to 500,000 barrels a day is off the market now. And we're not even sure that some of these pipelines can be reactivated with long delays. So that is a major concern of ours for sure. And in Baghdad, as I said, unfortunately, there's no real motivation for that to happen. So the international community has a lot of leverage, I believe, both in terms of incentives, economic support, and also at the same time, accountabilities, like a carrot and a stick, where security agreements or reporting on human rights violations, all of these tools are in the US's capabilities. It's whether they exert them or not, and that's the question. And we argue very strongly as your really only true ally in the region that shares the same values and principles regarding freedom and democracy. And a little known fact, which I don't think a lot of people know about, which I hope to be promoting quite a bit in Washington and in the US, is that the Kurdistan region is the only region in the Middle East where there's a growing Christian population. They are fleeing other parts of Iraq and in the Middle East, where they're being persecuted, and they're coming and being protected, safe in the Kurdistan region. The coexistence of minorities and ethnic religious communities is a positive story for the KRG. It's a diversity that I think the West can relate to. And this is all under threat as the KRG continues to be undermined and destabilized. These vulnerable communities will also suffer along with us. This is something that we are encouraging our Western friends to support us.
Okay, thank you. Probably my last question, since you talked about democracy and human rights, there are lots of criticism of the KRG, and there has not been an election for more than 5 years now, and because of that, the Iraqi court was able to dissolve the the Kurdistan parliament and other institution, which has been very, very bad for the KRG's image. So what is the situation in the term of human rights and freedom of expression in the Kurdistan region, if you even compare it with a neighborhood?
Yes, sure. I mean, we do have some criticisms of those issues from the international community. I will say, compared to the rest of the region, though, they're nowhere near the magnitude. I think freedom of the press, freedom of expression for organizations and civil societies is quite vibrant in the KRG. Do we have some issues? Yes, we're not perfect. But I think, again, if you compare us to the rest of Iraq or the rest of the Middle East, I think there's no comparison to be made. In terms of your second point on, I've missed it. Elections, yes, I did want to talk about this. So you're absolutely right. The, and I'll put in quotes, federal Supreme Court in Iraq, which is not a valid court in terms of the Constitution. One other thing that has not been implemented, did declare our parliament defunct. And for months now, they are not in session. And because of that, we have not been able to really move forward on establishing a election timeline and process. So we've been forced to really work with the Iraqi Electoral Commission. And because of Iraq's own local elections that are supposed to take place in December, our elections has been postponed until February. Now, all of the parties have made statements that they're in support of that. We're hope that that's the case. We, as the KRG, is definitely 100% supportive about holding elections. I think for democratic values and principles, but only also for our accountability to the people that we serve, that we hold elections. And hopefully, inshallah, we will have them in February.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to stop right here and I open the floor for Q&As. And that will give enough time for your questions and also time for the kebab. Don't forget that. That's coming up.
Yeah, don't be shy. Come ask questions.
Hello, my name is Teddy. Thank you for coming here. I'm curious, looking at the conflict that's developing right now and thinking about its knock-on effects, how do you anticipate being in your position of balancing the interests of trying to attract America and dealing with your neighbors who are more hostile situation? How do you imagine that the KRG will seek to navigate its position in the coming weeks?
Thanks for your question. It's a good one. So we are consistently considering all of these factors. The KRG wants good neighborly relations, okay? We're not against Iran, we're not against Turkey, we're not against Syria. We also have a very strong relationship and friendship and historical partnership with the United States and other Western allies. We have more than 30 consul generals, general consulates in Erbil. So on the diplomatic front, we maintain good relations. We expect our own people to respect the territorial integrity of other nations. That is something that we would hope our neighbors would also have with us, which is generally not the case. They use it as a playground for their own internal conflicts and tensions, which has an effect of really injuring our civilian population, which is also condemnable. So as we try to navigate, I think we're trying to do a balancing of interests where there are shared values. There are ways we can cooperate and coordinate with each other. At the same time, I think, we have a closer relationship with the United States and Western allies in terms of our values. There are definitely going to be red lines that we cannot cross as a regional government in Kurdistan. We have to also balance our relationship with the rest of Iraq and the federal government. So it is not easy. Sometimes we are faced with impossible decisions. We do the best we can. Our number one priority is the protection and safety of the 5 million Kurds that we are responsible for.
Thank you for speaking. I'm actually a former employee of Washington Kurdish Institute, so I've seen some of these people here before under Yusuf Ismail. I actually also worked at the Embassy of Iraq, so that's done a lot of Iraq work. I guess I have maybe two questions. If you just want to answer one, that's fine. But someone asked me a couple of days ago, Dom, do you think that the whole Israel-Hamas war, and you said it before, that the U.S., kind of looked away from the Middle East for a bit and now realizes it has a bunch of security problems. Do you think the U.S., in terms of this, might pivot back towards the Middle East using Kurds to, to strategically support Israel? Is this a wake-up call for the U.S. to work, more with KRG, maybe even SDC? I guess my other question is today, I don't want to be black and white. That's something good for Turks is, bad for KRG or whatever. But President Erdogan's been really trying really hard to be the mediator in Gaza and Israel. And Biden actually announced today that he might, seek a deal to get Sweden into NATO. Erdogan will take control of Israel immediately at that. How does the KRG feel about that in terms of, Erdogan gaining a role with Israel? Is that good? Is that bad? Has that changed there? Thank you. Sorry, that's a complex question.
I might need a pen to write some messages down, if you don't mind. Gaza and Turkey. Thank you so much. Thank you. Look, our relationship with Turkey is a complicated one. However, I would say it's a little bit more positive than our neighbor to the east. The Turks are laser focused in on the PKK, and wherever they go, they follow. And unfortunately, they come to Kurdistan, they come to Iraq, into the disputed territories, and take advantage of those security vacuums. And it's concerning to us. And we have very frank discussions with the Turks about this. At the same time, we would prefer that these groups not use the Kurdistan region as their territory for attacks on foreign governments. In terms of playing mediator role in this, I don't know that the KRG really has a position on it. We will support de-escalation. We will support, the addressing the humanitarian crisis that's happening. At the same time, terrorism should be condemned. Acts of aggression and the innocent slaughter of civilians should not be tolerated and condemned by all. So we are clear in our position that we don't want to get involved in this conflict. However, if this conflict comes to us, we are definitely going to need some help from the U.S. and our coalition allies to protect us. And I'm sorry, what was your first question?
Do you believe that because of this war, It's a terrible situation. Well, do you think the Kurds can play a role in U.S. pivoting back to the Middle East, overall?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, we do have some bases in the Kurdistan region that is used by U.S. Forces. Clearly, as or if should this conflict escalate, they're going to need areas and places to protect themselves as well as their allies, which they have said they will do. So there could be a role for that. But as I want to stress, we're not trying to get involved in this conflict. So this is not an invitation or an offer for us to be used in that way. But look, when the menace of ISIS came to Iraq and very close to our borders, we worked together very well in terms of our own Peshmerga forces really doing the fight for the world against this menace and this terrorist organization. And we will continue to depend on that cooperation and strategic partnership as we go forward.
Afternoon. I'm also an alumnus of the School of International Service. A number of years ago, I won't tell you how many, but it doesn't approach 3 figures. So also please excuse the naivete of my question, because I'm well aware of the various Kurdish communities in Turkey, in Syria, in Iran, and also, of course, in Iraq. To what extent does the KRG have any authority and allegiance from these other communities and these other, to some extent, different Kurdish cultures in these countries that have developed over the years, a number of years, generations, where they've picked up local customs and cultures? How has that been integrated into that? And to what degree does the KRG have any authority and allegiance from them?
Yes, thank you. So the KRG is an entity with responsibility and sovereignty over northern Iraq, not the entire Kurdish diaspora. Having said that, we have relationships with other Kurdish brothers and sisters in other countries. And depending on those relationships, we have sometimes coordination, sometimes we'll support them, sometimes we'll disagree with them on certain actions. But most recently, there was a creation of the Confederation of Kurdish Diaspora in Erbil. I think it's been a couple of years, so it's new. But the mission and the goals is to have a more wider spread Kurdish diaspora organization to address some of the similarities that we all face in the various countries in the region. And I think as more and more time goes on, we'll probably see more activity from this organization. But the KRG remains and will always support the Kurdish issue and aspirations as long as it's done in a peaceful manner, where it doesn't endanger unnecessarily the lives of its civilians. And we will always work with and coordinate or cooperate with other Kurdish entities.
Thank you for taking the question. You mentioned earlier about Peshmerga fighting terrorism being on the forefront of the fight. From my perspective, in DOD, DOS, that's a double-edged sword because of the fact that they are effective. And the vantage point I see is that there's always a fear with the Americans that it becomes a tactical level friend and not a strategic level friend, maybe at best operational. So I guess my question to you would be, what is the blueprint for this to go beyond the tactical level, because that's a dangerous situation to be in vis-a-vis the United States government? Thank you. I'm sorry, oh, Rocco Centauri.
Yeah, thank you. It is true. I think in the past, the Peshmerga units have been used in operational tactical missions. I will just argue, though, that I think there is some hope to a more strategic partnership, and that is a MOU that was signed between the KRG and the Department of Defense. And in that MOU, there is language regarding a more broader strategic partnership, which, by the way, includes reforming and modernizing our Peshmerga forces, so that we have a ministry now for Peshmerga, and that we bring in the party forces into the ministry so that we have a modern defense system. Look, for years, the Kurds did not invest in its defense. We depended on Iraq as the federal government, which has responsibility to protect all Iraqis, including Kurdistan. But I think the onslaught of ISIS showed us the weakness and the gaps that exist. And so then we were forced to really take a good, serious, long look at our defense capabilities. Yes, Peshmergas are resilient. They're amazing fighters. And they continue to be so to this day. However, I think our relationship has evolved since ISIS with the US government and international coalition forces to continue to work together to root out ISIS in its insurgency stage now, even though it was defeated in 2017. And then bigger challenges like this conflict in the region. And to be honest, our security challenges with the Iraqi Shia militias. So thank you.
My name is Casey. I'm a freshman here at SIS. And I want to ask, what would you like to see the US do? Like in an ideal world, what would you like to see the US do to help with all these dire situations, like Peshmerga being the skirmish between Iraqi forces and Peshmerga, the US soldiers themselves being attacked in Syria and Iraq recently? How would you like the US to help deal with those problems?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think continuing to support the Kurdistan region and our Peshmerga forces is a priority. Leaving us or abandoning the region would be a fatal mistake. So first priority, maintain support. How does that support translate? In a lot of ways. Militarily, yes, they can do more, I think, to help us with defensive equipment and assets to safeguard us from the aggression of neighbors who do bombard us and throw rockets in our territory. So maybe not offensive measures, but I think defensively, it makes a lot of sense. And I know we're working with Congress to ensure that that happens. On the political and economic front, which is just as important as security, they all sort of come together as one. They can help us pressure Iraq to ease the economic sort of sabotage that they're having on us with the oil exports, with the budget. Iraq is in a state of confusion, in my opinion, where they want the Kurdistan region to be part and parcel of Iraq as one nation. However, they treat us like we're something different. And that, to me, is not a sustainable policy, going forward. And the US can help us with that, as they have been in the past, as a reliable, impartial arbitrator and negotiator with the Iraqi forces and the Iraqi government. And I think they can also help us address some of the security challenges that we've been having with Iraqi forces in the disputed territories. So there's a lot of policies, agreements, and roadmaps that have been created to have a sustainable path going forward. None of it has been implemented. That's the problem.
Hi everyone, my name is Aiden Emanov. I'm a first year SIS grad student. I want to thank you guys for coming. My question is, how much inspiration does the KRG take from other regional territorial conflicts, such as the ones we see in the Balkans and the Caucasus that just recently occurred, in order to move forward with obtaining sovereignty and maintaining peace in the region? In other words, what positives and negatives does the KRG take from these other regional disputes in order to move forward with reconciliation, peace, and stuff like that? Thank you.
Okay, so I would say we do monitor regional conflicts or developments. There are a few in the world that are like us, like the KRG. And sure, we try to take, lessons from that. But I think the best lesson for us was the creation of a federal system in Iraq. And there is a roadmap in the Constitution of how to live together in peace. If those terms of that document are followed, then there's a higher success rate for living as one nation in a federal system. And what does this sound like? Does it sound like any place we know of? That could be, that's a possibility. The problem is Iraq is not under the control of Iraq. Iraqis are not under control of Iraqis. And the United States has to realize that the influence of foreign actors in the region has destabilized this federal system that we've built together. And so they have to have a role to counterbalance the negativity of the other side.
Okay, thank you very, very much for addressing all these very complex issues in a very diplomatic and very, very eloquent way. I really appreciate your time, and again, thanks very, very much for coming. Now it's time for the food and also networking. Please stay around, and also I am new here, so this is my second month at SIS. I'm going to stay here as long as possible. I'm the new scholar for this small project that we have at the SIS, the Kurdish program of the Kurdish project. If you have any questions about Kurdistan, Kurdish affairs, about the fellowship that I discussed, during my introduction, please come to me. Don't be shy. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
And I'll just add that the KRG Representation Office in Washington, D.C. is also open to you all. You are welcome to come visit us. Please call ahead so we make sure to receive you. But please come by and see us. I also am new. As you said, I started in July, so this is 3 months. Although I'm not new to Washington, I've been living and working here for many, many years. So please, welcome to the Representation Office whenever you like. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm a